Hello and good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the monthly HMIS training webinar. This month, we will be focusing on the HMIS Part 2 training. So, let's go ahead and get started. So this is the agenda for today. I want to give you a brief overview on some of the things that we will be going over in the training. First off, we will start with the introductions and policies associated with the HMIS Part 2 training. Then we will go in to how to do an intake and then also enroll a client into HMIS. From there, we will be creating and managing household members for the client that we first created. Then we will go over how to create and manage services and updates to client records. Finally, we will exit an example client from the program and also run an example report. I do ask that we hold questions until the end of each section or to the end of the webinar. So first, we will introduce and discuss the policies associated with the Part 2 training. So what is part two? HMIS part two training covers the data entry process and also the different functionalities of Clarity, which is a software that we use for HMIS. So when you work with real client data, there are some requirements that your computer must have in order to access Clarity. So some of the requirements are that your computer must be password protected at all times. It must be locked out after 10 minutes of inactivity. Login credentials cannot be displayed in a public area, meaning that your username and your password should not be written on a post-it note and stuck on your desk for everyone to see. Please keep in mind that Clarity is only compatible with the following browsers, which is Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Safari, or Firefox. Now, Clarity has an updated function that will display a pop-up warning if you're using a browser that is not compatible with Clarity. So if you get that pop-up, please update your browser. Do we have any questions? So next is the intake and enrollment. So when you first log into HMIS, you will be on the search page with the search bar. And then you can search for clients by their first and their last name, their social security number, or their date of birth. So you don't have to search up the full name. You can simply search up the first two letters of their first name and then also the first two letters of their last name. This is also helpful because sometimes a client's name might be spelled differently, such as Britney Spears versus Britney Spears. So when looking up the first two letters of her first and the first two letters of her last name, it will return searches to include all profiles with those first couple letters so that you can better distinguish duplicate profiles. So before you create a new client record, you should search by any of these identifying pieces of information to make sure that the client does not already have a record in HMIS. So, in a case where a client already has a record, you do not need to create a new one. So, you want to check for the client's date of birth, social security number, and the spelling of their name, just to make sure that you have the correct client. If you're able to confirm the accuracy of the information with your client, you will use that existing profile to enroll them into your agency's project, which we will cover in a few minutes. If the client informs you that the demographic information in HMIS is incorrect, please be sure to update the client's profile before you enroll them into your project. So, in the case that you do find a duplicate profile, duplicate meaning the same name, social security number, date of birth, please submit a ticket to the help desk with the unique ID each profile to have them merged. So for our example client, Peter Griffin, he does not have a profile in HMIS. So let's create a new profile for him. So after you click the Add Client button, you will be taken to the client profile creation page. You will fill out each field on this page and then hit the Save button at the bottom to save the client record. So the profile page asks you to enter the client's name date of birth, social security number. If the client has provided you with that information, then you may enter it. So Clarity Now has a function that if you spell a client's name in all caps or all lowercase, it will automatically correct the name to capitalize the first letter and also the first letter of the last name, and then lowercase all the remaining letters that follow. So if you do not have the client's name, date of birth, or social security number, you may leave the field blank and answer the quality of name, quality of date of birth, or the quality of social security number according to the reason as to why the information is missing. So the quality question gives you these three options when the information is not filled in. Use this response if the client doesn't know their name, date of birth, or social security number. Then we have client refuse. Use this response if the client refuses to give you their information. And then we have data not collected for when you did not ask the client for their information. And if you do not have a social security number for the client, please enter it as all zeros and then select the appropriate data quality option. And then you can see at the bottom of the screen that you will need to sign a release of information. You can do this on the right-hand side of the screen for the enrollment. So you must upload a release of information from the client. This is a document that the client typically signs during intake. When a client signs off on this, they are allowing your agency to share their information with HMIS. Since any other HMIS participating agency will not have access to their information. So if they sign off on the ROI, please select yes in the permission field. And then also you would have to enter in the start date. This is the date that the client signed the ROI. The start date usually defaults to today's date, but you can adjust it to match the date that the client signed the form. And then also the end date. This is a date that the ROI will expire. In our system, ROIs typically expire every 7 years. So you do not have to touch this field. It would automatically populate for you. And then also you have to select the type of documentation. This is asking you to identify which way the ROI is being stored. So one is the electronic signature, another is a PDF. We also have the verbal consent. Due to current circumstances, we are allowing agencies to enter clients with a verbal consent. But we will be tracking these clients so that we can get an actual signature from them once things are back to normal. And we also have a household option. You would use this for a minors page, so you do not have to attach any additional documents to their record. And then clients can also select no if they refuse to share their information. So notice that once you click no for the permission field, all of the other fields will disappear. Do we have any questions? So we have a question. If the client refuses to sign the ROI, do we stop with the process? So not necessarily. You will just have to make the profile private so that the client's information is only being shared with your agency. So next we will go on to creating a managing household. What is a household? A household is a single individual or a group of people who are enrolling into a project together. So in HMIS, there are two household configurations to manage. First is the global household, which is connected to the client's profile. And then also we have the program household, which is connected to the client's enrollment. So before enrolling clients into a project, you will need to make sure that the client's global household accurately reflects the client's current household composition. So here we have our example client. This is Peter Griffin. He is our head of household. So Peter has a son named Stewie that we would like to add to his household. If you are following along and have already created a client profile for Peter, please do the same for Stewie. So now that Stewie has a client profile set up, we will be able to add Stewie to Peter's profile. You will go to the head of households page and then go to the household members section and then click manage. Then it will take you to the household management screen where you will be able to search for Stewie and add him using the button next to his name. Sometimes instead of an add button, a join button will appear. This means that the client is already in another household, which we will go over on what to do when that situation occurs. So once you click add, this pop-up box will appear asking for the member type. In this case, Stewie is his son, and then the pop-up will also ask for the date that the client enters the household. So now we would like to add another member to the household. This is Brian. Since we already went over on how to create a client profile and how to add a client to the household, please do the same for Brian. So earlier, we mentioned that sometimes a join button will appear instead of an add button. This means that the client is already in another household. So then you would be able to do one of two things. The first option is have the client in which you are on leave their household and join a new household. In this case, we will it would be asking us if we want Peter to leave his household and join Homer Simpson's. So if you click this, it will ask you for the date for when Peter left his household. Since Peter is the head of household, it is asking us to name a new head of household that could take his place. In this case, you can either name one of his other household members. Then it would ask you what his relationship is to the head of household. He will be joining, and then also the start date for when he is part of the new household. Or you can select the second option. So you have the client, the one that you looked up, leave their household and join a new one. In this case, it would be Homer leaving his household and joining Peter's. If they are not the head of household for for the household that they are leaving, you will only need to identify the relationship to the household that the new client is joining. In this case, what is the relationship between Homer and Peter? With Peter being the head of household. So let's say that they are cousins, but since this is scenario is not part of our case, we can move forward with our Griffin's household. So now I'm going to show you how to exit a client from the global household. For this example, we will exit Brian. So to do this, you will go to the household members section and then click the manage button. And then we're going to search for Brian's name. And then we're going to hit the edit icon next to Brian's name. Then a pop-up box will appear. You will need to fill out the member type, the head of household, the date joined will auto-populate for you. And then just make sure that the exited household toggle is on, and then provide the date exited. And then hit save. So if you're following along, this is what your current household should look like. Do we have any questions? Okay, so next we will be enrolling clients into a project. So now that we have Peter's global household set up correctly, we want to enroll Peter's household into a project. In this case, we will be using the Springfield Homeless Shelter. So you will go onto Peter's profile and click on the Programs tab, and then click on the drop-down menu for the Springfield Homeless Shelter. Once in the drop-down menu, you'll be able to see the details of the project, and then enroll Peter as well as Stewie into the project. Just make sure that the toggle next to Stewie's name is selected, and then hit enroll. So after you click enroll, this is a screen that you will be directed to. You will need to complete this information for each member of the family. There are some key points that I wanted to cover because these data elements affect numerous HMIS reports. So first, we have the project start date. Project start dates, when did the client begin working with the project? And this can vary depending on the project type. There are certain parameters that need to be met, so please be sure that you understand what they are so that you can properly determine when the project start date occurred. And then we have prior living situation. This information is used to determine if the household is chronically homeless. So please be sure to gather this information correctly. So the type of residence, where was the client just before the project start? Then we have length of stay and prior living situation. How long did the client stay in that place? And then next we have approximate date of homelessness started. So how long has the client been in a literal homeless situation in the past 3 years? And then we also have number of times on the street, emergency shelters, or safe haven. How many times have the client been in the literal homeless situation in the past 3 years? And then finally, we have the total number of months homelessness on the streets, in emergency shelters, or a safe haven in the past 3 years. So how many cumulative months has the client been in a literal homeless situation in the past 3 years? And then next we have disabling condition. Does the client have a disabling condition? This is used to determine a client's chronic homelessness status. So it is important that if the client does have a disabling condition, you select yes, and then also yes for the type of disabling condition that they have, and then whether it is long-term or not. If you select yes for physical, chronic health, or mental, please specify whether it is long-term or if it is not. So the next one is income. You can select no or yes for any of these fields. If you do select yes, you will need to identify where the income is coming from. If the minor child has an income and it is used for household expenses, you will need to add the amount of to the head of household record, because a minor cannot have an income record made for themselves. And also for non-cash benefits, you will also need to identify which non-cash benefits they receive. And then also you would do the same for health insurance. So there are a list of OC custom questions that have been added to the enrollment form as part of the 2020 Data Standards Update. These questions are pretty straightforward, as ask what city were you immediate prior to entry? what state and what country were you born in, your employment status, and if you are affiliated with any of the federally recognized tribe. If you are not affiliated, then you can just skip this question. Do we have any questions? So next we have services and updates. So next we would add services to the project that Peter is enrolled in. Services can be required by different funding sources and program requirements. So please be sure to confirm with your agency administrators when and how services can be applied to each of your projects. We want to be on Peter's profile and then go under the programs tab, select the edit icon next to the project that we would like to add services to. In this case, this is the Springfield Homeless Shelter. From there, you'll be able to click on the Provide Services tab and then select a service from the list of services. For this training, we will add a bus pass under the transportation services. So then you would click on the drop down menu, and then from there, you will be directed to the screen where you'll be able to add the start date, the end date of the service. You can also add in group members if necessary, and then also include a note for the service that you provided. And then once you are done, click submit. So next, we will create a service attendance for Peter. Sometimes we have services that are offered to clients on a day-to-day basis, such as food or transportation. It will take too long for you to look up every client that has received that service and enter it in the usual way that we have shown you. These services that are provided on a daily basis or even multiple times a day can be set up to track clients by attendance. So to do this, you will click on the launch pad on the upper right hand corner and then select attendance. Select the service that you would like to create the attendance for. For this training, we will use the food meal service. And then click on the edit button next to that service. Then it will take you to the screen. So you would select the date that you would like to add the service for. You can add a client by one of two ways. You can search for the client on the right-hand side of the page, or if the client has already been in attendance for the last 4 months, their name would show under the clients from the last 4 months section. Since Peter is new, we will have to search up his name. So once you hit search, his name will appear with the add button on the right. Click the add button to create an attendance for Peter. So once you click add, Peter's name should appear under the in attendance section. And then you will be able to do this as many times as you like. And the final results should look a little bit something like this. So following the exact same format, you can add in housing notes. Housing notes should be used for information related to housing the client. These notes should be shared with the COC in order to streamline the housing process for the client and to coordinate care among multiple agencies. So housing notes should follow the PRIP format, which is the purpose, intervention, response, and plan. So, what is the purpose? This is to identify the purpose of the session. Why was the session necessary? So, an example would be that the client is currently receiving rental assistance and needs to continue making rental assistance until the rental assistance ends. Next, we have intervention. What did you do to assist the client? So an example would be that we identify benefits for the client that he or she may be eligible for, refer the client to resources to assist with resume building. And the response would be what was the client's response to intervention. You can also include outcomes measures and documentations and how you would progress towards the goal and objectives. So an example would be that client agrees that she needs both benefits and income in order to maintain rental payments in the future. And then last, we have the plan. What are the next steps determined by you and the client to achieve housing goals? So an example will be that the client will apply for benefits identified by next Friday, and then she will also work on her resume and then bring a draft to our meeting in 2 weeks. Oh, excuse me. So this is what it should look like in the PRRP format. And then you can find your entries of the housing notes under the history tab. The next thing I want to go over is how you can add a client note on an agency level. So when this is made public, it is available for all agencies to see. When it's private, it is only available for your agency to see. So to do this, you will go onto the profile page and then click on the notes tab. And then you click add note. So you enter the title of the note, when the note was created, enable time tracking, and of course a description of the note. So I'm going to say collected paperwork for housing assistance. I'm going to hit save. Now we will add a client note on a project level, similarly to the client notes on an agency level. When it is public, it is available for all agencies to see. When it is private, it is only available for your agency to see. So you click on the programs tab on the profile screen, select the edit button next to the Springfield Homeless Shelter. And then also you click add notes under the notes tab. So the same way you would enter the title of the note, when the note was created, enable time tracking, and then also a description of the note. So I'm going to say that the client requested for transportation and then click save. So case notes are only visible to the agency that created the note. Case notes should be used to track information regarding the client's enrollment that should not be shared with the COC. So case notes should be entered on the same day that the incident occurred, or next day if it's not possible to enter it on the same day. I just want to remind everyone that recording the information as soon as possible makes it so that the information is more accurately collected. And the note should utilize as many facts as possible. If it is recording assumptions such as appeared to me, seems to be, then it should be followed by an explanation as to why the assumption is being made. Case notes should avoid diagnosing jargon or stereotypes or prejudices. Case notes should avoid usually using emotionally charged words such as abnormal, dangerous, delusional, disturbed, hysterical, immature, impulsive, threatening, or uncooperative. You do not need to use complete sentences as long as the intent of the statement is clear. Also, case notes should only contain relevant information that is important to the client's well-being. So I'm going to give you some example of what is good and bad. So instead of saying, I drove over to the workshop to see Chris, went over to the building, and then saw her talking to her friend, I walked up to her and I needed to talk to her about her SSI chat. Really, you can just say, I talked to Chris about her SSI chat. Another example would be Derek was acting out. when really we should say Derek skipped school and was caught shoplifting. And the last example would be that Mrs. Jacob seems very depressed. We should really be saying, Mrs. Jacob stated, "Of course I'm depressed. Wouldn't you be too if you were in my situation?" So now we will set a public alert. There are times when it is necessary to notify your agency or several other agencies of a client situation or need. So this, you will use a public alert. So this will make it so that a notification will appear on the client's profile page, visible to anyone looking at that record. So if to do this, you will click on the Notes tab on the profile screen. And then right under the client notes section, you will see a section for a public alert. And then you would click Add Alert. So when the alert is created, you will enter the title and then also add a description explaining for the reason of the alert. I'm going to say if Peter is searching for his driver's license, he can pick it up at the OC training agency because he accidentally left it here. So when you select the private checkbox, it will make sure that the alert is only visible to staff in your agency. Otherwise, it would be visible to anyone looking up the client's record. And then you would click Save. So when clients are in a project, we understand that certain things might change, such as income or a client disability status. You will need to add a status assessment to the client record to capture these changes. This must be dated as the day the client information changes, and there is no limit to the amount of status assessments that you can add. To do a status assessment, go to the profile and then click on Programs and then click on Assessments, and then you click Start. So it would then take you to this window. You will select which client from the head of household that you would like to complete the assessment for. In this case, we will pretend that Peter got a job and then also some Social Security benefits, so that we would only be completing a status assessment for him. So this will be similar to the enrollment screen that we filled out earlier in the training. So these screens will auto-populate for you with what you inputted in during the enrollment. You will need to make changes to the fields that you would need. So let's say that Peter is now working. We are going to do a status assessment to reflect his income. I'm going to change my previous answer from no to yes, and then toggle over what applies to him, which is earned income and SSDI. And I want to set both to 500 and then click Save. Another common status assessment you can add for is when a minor is enrolled in your project and that minor has turned 18. So you can add a status assessment and create income and sources for them. As I mentioned earlier, that if a minor is contributing to a household expenses, then the amount they contribute will be added to the head of household's record. If they turn 18 while in the project and continue to contribute the same amount to the household expenses, you will create a status assessment, and for the income from any sources field, select no to show that the client is not contributing additional income. So unless that minor who has turned 18 contributes more money, then you will add the additional amount that they are contributing to the status assessment. This is because if you take away from the head of household and move it over the entire amount to a new adult record, it will look as if the head of household has lost their income, when in reality it was just moved over to another record. So now we were going to go over on how to add an annual assessment for an individual if they have been active in your project for more than a year. or a year, I mean. Okay, so you will be able to add the annual assessment 30 days before or 30 days after their 1 year anniversary of their project start date. So if the client started the project on January 1st of 2020, then you can add the assessment as early as December 2nd of 2020, but no later than um, January 31st of 2021. And then you would access the annual assessment the same way that you would with the status assessment. So when you're dealing with family, also known as a group enrollment, then the annual assessment is based on the head of household anniversary date. So for example, if Peter has a project start date of January 1st, 2020, and he is active as of December 2nd, 2020, then he will need an annual assessment as we described. But if, let's say, Stewie did not enter the project until November 2nd, 2020, he will still need to get an annual assessment by January 31st, 2021, because that is when the head of household is getting theirs. Do we have any questions? We have a question to ask if we can use the notes if in the case that the client denies an ROI. So no, we typically do not use notes when that situation happens. So now we will exit a client from the project. So when a client is no longer in need of our project services, you will need to exit them from the project. So to do this, you will need to edit the enrollment for the head of household in the project that they are exiting. So you go to the programs tab, click on the edit button next to the project that you wish to exit the client. In this case, it would be the Springfield Homeless Shelter. So you select the exit button on the right side like it is shown here. And then after you select the exit icon on the enrollment, you will have a chance to select the names of the people in the household that you would wish to exit. And then you have to answer the exit questions for the people that you have selected. So one of the required questions is the destination on where the client is going. In this case, I'm going to say that Peter is renting with no ongoing subsidy. Destination should match the housing situation that the client will be staying in on the night that they leave your project. And if you have any services that are still open, you will have the chance to close out these services. So you would just need to enter the exit date and then click save and close. Do we have any questions? So to access the HMIS reports, please go to the Launchpad and then click on reports to access a list of HMIS reports. So it would then take you to this page, and then you can see that is divided up into 3 sections, which is the report library, explore, and data analysis. So the report library, this contains canned reports. These reports are made so that you will only need to adjust a few filters, such as the date range, program name, etc. For the Explorer, you will have the chance to play around with Looker and create your own custom reports. And then as for the data analysis tab, this is a library of reports that will contain any custom reports that we have created specifically for your agency. So you can expand each section of the reports and see more information and also a summary of the purpose of the report. But for this training, we will focus on using the CAN reports under the program-based reports. So we will be going over how to run the program roster report. So you would click run, or if you would like to schedule a report on a specific day, you can select the schedule button. And then also the dates that you will will run the report on. So first, you would choose your program. In this case, it would be the Springfield Homeless Shelter, and then it would give you options for the status. So we have the active within the report date range, meaning that the client's project stay is active at least one day within the report date range. And then we also have enrolled within the report date range, meaning the client's enrollment date is within the report date range. And then we also have the exited within the report date range, meaning that the client's exit date is within the date range. So for this training, we will use the active within the report date range, and I'm going to do October 1st to the end of October, since that was when our client was enrolled into the project. And the output gives us 3 options, which includes a web page, PDF, and Excel file. A web page is a functional format that will allow you to click on the errors found in the report and then be taken directly to the client's record containing the error. The PDF is good for official reports, grants, or copies for your agency. And an Excel file will allow you to download it as an Excel file, and then you can use it in Excel to manipulate and organize your data. So for this training, we will select the web page and select submit. So you will see that it is in the queue now. We will give it a moment to open up. Once this is ready, a notification will pop up, and then you will be able to open it directly from there. And this is what it would look like. And then I also want to quickly remind that on October 7th, we implemented an HMIS Part 2 training task list for HMIS users completing to complete as part of the new onboarding process, and then also the recertification process. So please use this link to access the task list. And then also, we will be sending out materials from today's webinar, so be on the lookout for that. Please visit the OC HMIS knowledge base, search up the task list for more information on the task list and any other information that we covered today. And then also the task list will test your skills on everything that we've covered today in the training. Once this has been completed, submit have your agency administrator submit on your behalf the account update and testing form. And then we will review your task list and send you your results. So again, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the chat box or check out our knowledge base articles for step-by-step instructions on everything that we've covered today. If they are specific to your agency, please submit a ticket to the HMIS Help Desk. We will be sending out a wrap-up email to you with some resources and also a survey to let us know if this webinar was helpful or not. And then how we can improve our future webinars. Thank you so much and have a great day.